Drizzle is a modern TypeScript ORM that has gained significant popularity in recent months due to its lightweight and performance nature. It stands out for being highly flexible, type-safe, and super performant. With Drizzle, you can define and manage database schemas in TypeScript, accessing your data in a SQL-like or relational manner. Unlike other TypeScript ORMs, Drizzle is a headless ORM, offering the most flexible ORM solution. It embraces SQL and is designed to be SQL-like at its core. This means that if you have a basic understanding of SQL, you can leverage the full power of SQL within TypeScript with no learning curve. Drizzle allows you to fetch relational nested data from the database in a convenient and performant way, eliminating concerns about joins and data mapping. You can write the most complex queries and Drizzle will generate exactly one query, ensuring optimal performance compared to other modern ORMs. In this tutorial, you will first learn about ORMs. Following that, you will learn about how to self-host your database server using Docker and best practices. Then we will dive into Drizzle ORM with a fully functional project, a blog website where users can sign up, read, create, and update posts, as well as create comments and replies. You will also learn how to search for posts by search term or author or many other options, showcasing the full power of Drizzle. Unlike other online courses, you will learn it by creating a fully functional project which you can publish and use as your personal blog website. I have invested a significant amount of time in this tutorial, so liking and subscribing means a lot to me and can help my YouTube channel grow. If you have any questions about the video, please leave them below and I will respond as soon as I can. So let's get started. What is an ORM in first place? ORMs are object relational mappers, which are libraries or frameworks that facilitate the interaction between applications and relational databases. They allow developers to work with database records as if they were objects, abstracting the complexities of database operations such as querying, inserting, updating, and deleting records. This abstraction layer enables developers to write cleaner and more maintainable code with an amazing developer experience. Now that we have learned what are ORMs, we can start building our project. The tutorial is fully focused on backend development, specifically SQL and Drizzle. If you are a backend developer, you can follow the tutorial completely, while the focus is not on front-end development. To help you understand the possibilities of Drizzle ORM with a real-world example and to save time, I have prepared a front-end app template that relies only on mock data. So if you want to follow, just open your terminal and paste this code here. You can find all the commands and codes in the description below. This command will clone the front-end branch of this repo that I created earlier in your current directory. There's also another branch called master, which is the full completed project that you can also clone that. But if you follow along the tutorial, you must only clone the front-end part of the application, which everything is mocked. So hit enter. Perfect. Now open your file explorer and check the .nvm.rc file. If you want to not encounter any issues during the tutorial, just be sure that you have at least Node 20 version installed on your system. Then finally install all the packages and then run the Next.js dev server. Also, we are going to use Docker to run our database server and admin dashboard locally. If you're running your database, for example, on cloud or any other way locally, you can also follow along. The only thing that we need here to be connected to our database is a connection string. That's it. Now open the .env.sample file. These are all of the environment variables that we are going to need for this tutorial, and we need to provide this database URL connection string here like this. The DB user is Postgres, password is Postgres, DB host is localhost because I'm running the database server locally, the port is 5432, and database name is block here. Or you can change all of these environment variables according to your need if you are using other ways of deploying database server. Also, the auth secret and auth trust host is required for authentication working in our application. We are using auth.js for this tutorial. Now, rename the file, remove the .sample here, and now it's not going to be exposed to the GitHub repo. Perfect. Now, open the terminal and run the npm install and npm run dev. This is the project running on port 3000. There is no real data here, but all the functionalities have been implemented. For example, I can click on read more to see the content of the post. I can click on the username to see all of its posts. I can click on the category of posts and see all the category posts. I can search for any specific post that I want. I can sign up or sign in. Just put a email, fake email here and a fake password. The authentication also is working, but with mock data. So you can log in with any email or password that you want, and the logged user can post comments for each post and also reply to the comments of other users like this. Also, the user is going to have a simple panel to manage his profile like this, or to manage his post like this. He can delete, view, or edit, or create a new post like this. He can create posts with this information: title, shoot, description, content, category, and also the tags that you want. Also, the user can sign out and new user can sign in and create new posts, and other users can see other users' posts. The project structure is pretty straightforward. We have src folder that we're going to spend most of our time in this folder. We have chassis and components and utilities in the library folder. We have our routes defined in the app folder. We have admin, group, and public group. Each user must be signed in to access the admin routes. Near each route, we're going to have actions and queries file. For example, in the root route of our application, we have actions file and queries file. The queries file is responsible for reading and getting data from our database. We have get categories, get tags, get related posts, get post count, get post, and other functions here, which currently they are completely mocked with a simple delay function, which is responsible for simulating the delay connection between backend and frontend in the real world scenario. The goal of this tutorial is to replace these functions with real functions that are gonna read and find data from our real database. For example, the get post is responsible for getting all the posts that are in our database at a specific page with a specific limit. Also, we can provide search term to find a specific post. You can also find all related queries at different routes. For example, in the /categories route, we have another queries file here, or in the admin group, we have another queries at /admin route of our application. So the goal of this is to keep everything related as close to each other as we can. We have another type of file called actions here, which actions are responsible for our server actions and mutating data on our database. For example, in this folder, actions.ts, we have a function called update user, which is responsible for mutating our user on the database and returning a message based on the result of the action. We have other actions, for example, in the /admin/post/create, which is responsible for creating and updating posts. So like I said, we're gonna keep everything as close as we can to each other. If I search for queries.ts files here, you see that we have 6 queries file. And if I search for actions.ts files, you can see that we have multiple actions file. That the goal of this tutorial is to replace all of these queries and actions mock function by real data functions. So the only part that we are gonna consider in this tutorial is how to communicate with the database, getting, reading, and mutating data on our database. If you head over to the official Drizzle website here, we can see all compatible SQL databases here. My choice for this tutorial is Postgres, but you can also choose other SQL options here. If you click on your desired SQL database, for example, here Postgres, we can see all the ways that we can connect to our database. We can use Neon Provider, Postgres.js, Vercel databases, Supabase, and other options. And here we are going to use Node Postgres here. Also, you can choose other ways of using Postgres database, but because we are running our database locally in this tutorial, the Node Postgres adapter is a good option here. Now just close everything here and head over to the lib folder here and open the .env.ts file. This is our environment variables schema validator, but we need to add other fields to this Zod schema here like this. And if we run our application without these environment variables, the Zod won't let us to do that because we are going to throw in an error here and the user will know that there is an error with the environment variable. So if we provide other env than this file here, the project cannot be built, which is a good thing to do. Now just make sure that your Docker client is running in the background, and at the root of your project here, create a new file called docker compose.yaml and put all of this in here. The thing that this YAML file is gonna do is to running the Postgres 16 image on the port that we specify in the environment variable, and is gonna create a volume called dbdata and put all the things related to our database data in that persisted folder. So if we delete our container in the Docker application, the data will not be lost, which is a good thing. Also, we are gonna run an admin dashboard panel to interact with our database, which adminer here is a good option. It's very lightweight with a low size. Now we need to install all the related packages for our application. Open the terminal here, just stop the development server for now and install the Drizzle ORM and Drizzle Zod. For now, the Drizzle Zod is not required, but it's a very good practice to create type-safe schema for our forms by the defined table for our database. By define tables in our database. Now that we have chosen the Node Postgres for our database client, we need to also install the PG package from the npm like this. Perfect. Now we need to also install some other dev dependencies for our application. We need Drizzle kit to generating migration files and migrating our database. We need ESLint, Drizzle ESLint plugin, TypeScript ESLint plugin. Let me make it a little bit smaller. And also the TSX package to run our migration files. Just hit enter and install all of these as dev dependencies by this deflag. Perfect. In our tsconfig file, we need to add another pass here. This line here, which is responsible to access files at the root level of our application and above the src folder. Also in our ESLint file here, we need to replace this object, this new object, which is gonna utilize the Drizzle ESLint package that we just installed earlier. And also don't forget to have the ESLint plugin installed on your IDE to write more clean code for Drizzle. Now close everything here and inside the src folder here, create a new folder called db, which stands for database. Inside it, create another folder called schema here and a TypeScript file called index.ts, which is responsible for exporting all of the schemas that we're gonna define in this folder here. Now we need to define our Drizzle config. Just create a drizzle.config.ts file in the root level of our application. Now paste all of this here. We have specified that our index file is in the db schema index.ts. Also, we are telling to the Drizzle that we need our migrations file in the DB folder here. Our dialect is Postgres, and we are providing our DB credentials or connection string, which is the database URL here in our environment file. Just leave a string to true. And if you want to see more verbose logging in the console while generating migration files, just leave the verbose to true, but it's not required for now. This is the database schema that we want to create. We have 6 tables in our schema: user, post, comment, category, tag, and post tags for creating many-to-many relations between post and tag. Our schema includes every possible relation: one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many, and self-referencing relations. A user can have many posts and comments. A post can have one category, many tags, and many comments. Also, a comment can have many replies using self-referencing relation. Now we can create our table files inside our schema folder. Just for now, create category, comment, post, tag, and user files in the schema folder. Now head over to the user.ts file and create the user table here. Just like this, we can define our tables in Drizzle. This course is not about learning SQL, but if you know SQL, the syntax might be very similar to you. But just pay attention that we need to import our column definitions from the right place. Because we have chosen Postgres for our SQL database, we need to import all of our imports, table and schema related things from pgcore. Our user table will have following fields: a unique identifier for its primary key, which is unique and self-incrementing using serial here, a required full name, a required age, a required password, and email, which is also required and unique, created at and updated at add timestamps that cannot be null and are auto-generated using default now. As you can see, we are writing SQL with the syntax of TypeScript. If you know SQL, Drizzle ORM will feel familiar to you. The field names here are what we use in our application, and these are how they are stored in our database. So if you pay attention, we are using camel case for what we use in our application and the snake case for what are stored in our database. Also, because I am following a naming convention here, just add an underscore between full and name and make these camel case name to a snake case, which was a mistake. But just you know that these names here are not important to us in our application, and only these names are what we use. Also, never save user passwords in the database like this. Always hash them. However, to keep this tutorial simple and because we need to log in with different users, we will leave it as is for now. That's enough for now for our user table. Now head over to the category.ts file and create a category table here. Our category is pretty much simple with an ID field and a name field. Also, the name must be not null and unique with the maximum length of 255. And export the user and category table that we just created like this in this index.ts file. After that, head over to the post.ts file, then create the post table like this. Most of the fields are pretty straightforward, like ID, title, short description, content, created at, and updated at, except for user ID and category ID. The user ID field on the post table is a foreign key referencing the primary key on the user table. So if I head over to the user table, we see that the ID here is a primary key and the user ID is referencing it, which is how we define one-to-one relation with Drizzle and defining our foreign keys. Also, the same is valid for category ID. The category table and post table have one-to-one relation between each other, so we need to specify our category ID foreign key like this and point it to the primary key on the category table that we defined earlier. Also, creating enums in Drizzle is pretty straightforward like this. We need to import it from Drizzle PG core, and imagine that our post might have three status: draft, archived, and published, and we can simply use this enum in our schema like this here, but we do not need this in tutorial because it's too much overkill. So let me remove it, and perfect. Now for the comment table, head over to the comments.ts file. I realized that I have a typo here. Change comment to comment for now and create the comment table like this. It's mostly the same as before. The content, post ID, created at, and updated at field are self-explanatory. Also, the user ID is referencing the ID field on the user table and it cannot be null, meaning that our comment must have a user, which means a user ID. But the tricky part about this comment table is this parent ID field here, because we want our comment section to have reply capabilities, or in other words, some of our comments, or in other words, the replies are gonna have a parent comment, or in other words, a parent ID. So this parent ID field here is self-referencing the ID field on the comment table, because we need to refer to the ID field of the comment table in one of its fields itself like this. And because of that the TypeScript does not support this type of scenario, we need to overcome this by importing the any PG column type from the PG core to overcome this issue, which is a workaround created by Drizzle itself, and it does the job. So by now we have created a comment section that is gonna have a user, and also it might have a parent, which means the comment is also a reply to another comment. That's for now for our comment table. Now head over to the tag.ts file and create the tag table like this. It's pretty much self-explanatory for now. So now that we have implemented the basic tables for our application, we need to get familiar with the concept in Drizzle called relations. Let me just show you what I mean by an example. Just head over to the user.ts file here. By this point of the tutorial, you know that a user might have multiple posts. So we need to fetch the user's post in a very convenient way. So we need to somehow notify the Drizzle that our user table here might have a relation with the post table here. I'm not talking about the foreign key that we have specified in the post table, which is referring the ID on the user table. So it's necessary for this feature to work. So what I mean, head over to the user.ts file again and imagine that I want to get a specific user with all of its posts. So what should I do? This is an example of what type of data, for example, I need for my user. Imagine that I want to get the full name of a user and all of its posts in an array like this. If I don't use the Drizzle ORM and if I want to follow old approaches, I need to create multiple queries and get the data that I want in that way. So I need at least 2 queries to have my user data like this. Until this point of tutorial, Drizzle cannot provide me with the data like this. So we need to specify the relations between the tables. Remove this example data here like this and add this relation in the user.ts file called user relations. Import the relations from Drizzle ORM itself and also the post table in this file here. So the syntax is very readable for what we're achieving here. This relations function, first of all, needs the table that we need to define relations on it. For the second argument here, we have access to many and also one to creating many-to-many or one-to-many or one-to-one relations for a database. For this example, I need to tell the Drizzle that my user table here might have some relations. And what are those relations? I'm telling Drizzle that my user might have multiple posts. So I need to get the many from the second argument and pass the post table that I'm importing from the schema here. It's as simple as this. We will understand the application of these relations for our database in a few moments. Now head over to the category.ts file. So I need to specify the category relations also on the category itself. So the category relations itself is not pretty much different from the user relations here that we just specified. A category might have also multiple posts that we can define it as before. Nothing new for now. For the comment table here, just paste this here, import the relations from Drizzle ORM, import the post table like this. And now I'm telling Drizzle that a comment might have a user and I need to specify a one-to-one relation like this. First, I need to specify the fields on the desired table, in this case, the comment table. So I'm telling Drizzle that the comment.userID field of my comment table is referring the ID field on the user table. And also a comment belongs to only one post, not many posts. So I need to do the same thing that I just did for the user relation here. So I'm telling the Drizzle that my comment has a relation to the post table like this. So first of all, I need to get the one on the second argument, then pass the desired table and use the syntax to create relations between the comment table like this to the desired field on the desired table. The thing that you need to know about these relations in Drizzle is that they are not changing our database schemas or tables in any other way. So they are here just to make our lives easier and making and creating queries to fetch complex data much easier. The only thing that is important that we need to do on our database table is that we specify the foreign keys on our tables like this. For example, this user ID and also this post ID, which I forgot to refer it to the post table. So just create the reference like this, references the post table dot ID, as simple as this. So defining the foreign keys like this will change the functionality of the tables on our database, but these relations are only to make queries much easier. So don't misunderstand them. If you recall earlier, we have a many-to-many relation between post table and tag table. To handle this type of scenario in SQL, we need to create another table called, for example, post tags tables, which is responsible for keeping the track of the post IDs and the tag IDs, because a post might have multiple tags and also a tag might have multiple posts, which there is no native way that SQL supports to do this type of scenario. So we need to also implement and add this post tags table to our schema. So let's get back to the VS Code and create a new file, the schema folder called posttags.ts, and create the post tags table like this, import them. Perfect. So our post tags table is gonna have a post ID field and also a tag ID field. So we have implemented it here like this, the post ID and the tag ID fields, which are foreign keys here, and they are referencing the ID field on the tag and the ID field on the post table. And by now, our table does not have a primary key field on itself, and it's not very good for performance. So we can create a primary key using the post ID and the tag ID themselves, which they are unique tuples, and creating primary keys by using the fields on the database table itself is pretty much simple with Drizzle, and the syntax is pretty readable. Also, we need to specify the relations on the post tags table. Let me import it. Perfect. So on each row of post tags table, we have a one-to-one relation between a tag and a post. But it's not enough to create a many-to-many relations in Drizzle. Also, we need to head over to the tag.ts file and also add this tag relations here like this, and import the post tags. The meaning of this relation is pretty self-explanatory. We are telling Drizzle that a tag might have many-to-many relations with the post tag table itself. So we are telling Drizzle that this table and this table are gonna have many-to-many relations, which means that a row on the tag table might be related to multiple rows of post tags and vice versa. Also, for the last thing related to our database schema is to define the relations on the post table itself. So let me just paste this code here, import as before, post tags table, and also the comment table. The user relation is pretty self-explanatory. A post is gonna have a user, a post is gonna have many tags like this. So we needed the post tags table for this moment. Also, a post might have many comments, and a post in our schema can have only one category, which we have implemented this type of relation many times. So to implement a many-to-many relation in Drizzle, first of all, we need to create a join table. We need to specify its relations, and we need also specify the relations on the post itself, post table itself, and also on the tag table itself. So by this point of the tutorial, we have implemented almost every possible relations that can imagine in Drizzle with the simplest possible form. Now that we have implemented our database structure here completely, it's time to use it within our application. The beauty of having our backend alongside our frontend combined with the power of TypeScript allows us to access our database in the frontend with amazing type safety and intelligence. For example, we can use the types of our tables to handle validations, for example, using Zod and other utilities with minimum code. This ensures that we have a single source of truth here, which are our database tables and also our database relations. Or in other words, for example, let's head over to the category.ts file here. As you can see here, we have the ID field here and the name field here. Imagine that our user might have the capabilities to insert data, for example, on the category table. Imagine that the user might see a CRUD form in one of our forms and wants to fill, for example, the name field on our form. In our table schema here, we have specified that the name field must be a string with the maximum length of 255. Also, it cannot be null. All the databases systems in general does not allow inserting any data or rows to our database that violates these requirements here. For example, we have specified here that the name field must be a string with the maximum length of 255 and it cannot be null. So if we want to insert a row to this table in our database, which the name field is not provided, the Postgres or any other database will not allow it. This approach is perfect, but we want to improve it a little bit further. Instead of allowing user to send incorrect data to the database and relying on the database to handle data accuracy, we can check it at the client level. What do I mean by that? Is that if a user does not provide the name field, for example, which we have told our database structure that it must be provided, our front-end client should prevent the user from sending any data to our backend. Similarly, if the user provides a name field more than 255 characters, we must display an error message indicating that they cannot enter more than 255 characters. This concept should be familiar if you have worked with form validations before. Additionally, we can validate the data right before creating a request to our database, which is ideal. This way, we achieve both client-side and backend-side validation with just a single table schema. Let's see how all of this works in practice. In the category.ts .ts file here exactly below our relations or in any other place, I want to get the type validations from my category table here. To do that, we have just installed an amazing library called Drizzle Zod, which is an amazing utility to convert the Drizzle tables to Zod schemas, to use those schemas, those Zod validation schemas in any place that we want to validate our data. Now, below the category relations or any other place, I just want to export my category schema like this. Category schema, you can name it whatever you want, but this name is pretty much readable for your future references, which is equal to create insert schema like this, and I need to pass the category table itself. Then I need to import it. My sense does not work, so let us import it from create insert schema from Drizzle Zod here like this. If you hover over it, we see that we have an amazing Zod schema object which is generated and calculated by this amazing create insert schema, which is have an ID field which is optional and also a name field which is gonna have the validations that we have passed to our table. That was for our Zod schema. Also, we need to export a type called category schema type, and we need to infer it from this category schema here by importing the Z from the Zod itself dot infer and the type of, we need to pass the category schema here like this. And if you hover over it, we see that we have the name and the ID as a type, so we can use it in the future in our applications. As simple as this, we have inferred our schema validation and schema types from our category table itself. Now we need to exactly repeat this scenario for other tables. For example, head over to the tag.ts file and paste this code here. Don't forget to import create insert schema from Drizzle Zod and also this it from Zod itself. Now for post tags, paste this code here. Don't forget to import the requirements. Perfect. And for the comment.ts file, it might be a little bit trickier than others. First of all, we need to export const comment a schema like this. As before, it's equal to create insert schema as the comment table as before, but we can override this Zod schema here by passing a second config object as a second parameter like this. Open an object here, then hit Control and space here. We see that we have IntelliSense here working, and specify the field that you want to override their default schema behavior, validation behavior. So for example, for post ID, I want to first of all get the schema from the callback here and type again the schema itself dot post ID dot mean one, which in Zod word means that the post ID must be provided by the user, or you can also add a message here that if the post ID is not provided, for example, show a different error to the user. For example, the post ID must be provided to override the default error messages that this Zod shows us. But we do not need it here, so let's just remove it. Also, duplicate it for the content field itself. Also another more time for user ID. Perfect. All the things that you are seeing here is related to Zod. Zod provides us with so much utilities that we can work with our runtime validations exactly the same way that we interact with our types in TypeScript. So for example, I can use the .pick operator and pick the fields that I want from the comment table itself. I can specify the post ID true. It means that the Zod must return the post ID from the comment schema. I want the content, the parent ID, the user ID, and also the ID itself. The reason that I have done something like this here is that I do not want to provide the created add or updated add field when I'm creating the comment on the client's level. Although we have told to our database that the created add and updated add must not be null, but we have specified that these values will be auto-generated by the Postgres itself. So this way of inferring our schema from our table is not a 100% drop-in replacement, so we need to do a little bit of tweaks to it to make sure that everything is working. So to create a comment in my application, I must provide the post ID, the content, and the user ID field, but my comment might not have a parent ID, and also I need the ID of the comment itself in a use case that I'm going to show you in a moment. After that, we have implemented all the schemas for all of our tables. Also, do not forget to infer the TypeScript type of our comment schema by by using Zod inferring like this. Now for the post table itself, it's much more trickier than the previous ones because this is not a Zod course. I simply paste the code that I prepared before here like this, from here to here, then import the requirements like this, also the Zod itself. The thing that is new here is that we can infer that how does look our post with this infer type from Zod itself. So if I hover over it, we see that we can infer the models of our database entities like this and use it in our application. But I'm gonna explain it to you a little bit that what we have done here. We have first of all defined our base schema, which is used only in this file here, so we are not exporting it. If we take a closer look to this schema here, we see that we want to implement the creating phase and editing phase for our post, so the user can create a post and also edit it. We are using unions in Zod, which means that if the mode field is on create, use these validations, and if the mode is set on edit, use these validations here. So the goal of this move here is that with only a single post schema file, we can handle both creating and editing a post. It's much of your preference. You can also make them separate. For example, you can create a create post schema like this, and also another one for edit post schema itself, but I prefer this way because it's much more readable and maintainable. So the reason that we are separating the create and edit mode is because of this ID field, because when we are creating a post, we do not have to provide the ID because the ID will be generated by the database. But when we are editing an entity on the database, we need to also provide the ID to tell the database that what we are editing. So the validations between the create and edit will be different. In this case, there is only one field different between create and edit, but in other scenarios, there might be multiple differences. So keep that in mind. To give you an idea that how this select post model is going to be used in the project, head over to the app folder, admin group, post component, and post table. And instead of using an array of any for the rows array, I'm just going to use the select post model, and I'm gonna import it from my schema folder like this, and perfect. The post table component is responsible for showing the post as rows, and each row is gonna be of type select post model. So if I hover over it, I'm gonna see that this is gonna exactly be inferred from the table schema that we defined in our database. Now head over to the public route, the components, and the postcards component, and also here, instead of using any for the data that I'm passing to the postcards component as props, I'm gonna use the select post model, which is gonna be also an array of posts. But as you might know, the card of each post is gonna have less data than the whole select post model object itself. So I'm gonna use the utility type called pig in TypeScript, and then I'm gonna extract the necessary things that I'm gonna need for this prop. I'm gonna need the ID of post, the title, the updated ad, so the viewer can see when the post got updated, and also I'm gonna show the user a very short description of the post. Perfect. Now let's head over again to the post.ts file, and also we need to again repeat this type of scenario that we define our base schema and drive our post schema and all of its variants like creating and editing from its base schema for our user table also. So let's head over to the user.ts file, and below here, let me just paste this code here. Let me make it a little bit smaller for you to see better. I'm gonna import create insert from Drizzle Zod, then this Z from Zod. Perfect for now. And also don't forget to import the invert select model. Perfect. So I'm gonna need the full name, password, age, and email to have these validations. Also, I want my age to be between 18 and 99. And also I want the email field be validated by the existing email utility on Zod, and also I'm gonna get full name, password, age, and email that I refined them here. Now for the user schema, we are gonna have 3 variants. One variant is when the user is signing up, so I'm gonna set the mode on sign up. The user must provide his email, password, full name, and age when he is signing up. When the user is signing in, he mostly is gonna provide us his password and also his email. And also when the user is updating his data in the admin dashboard, first of all, he's gonna provide us with an ID. He maybe is gonna change his age or full name, and that is for now for our user schema that we can use it in our application. Now let's use this select user model just for now in our application. Now head over to the user avatar in the root of our app folder here, in the components and in the user avatar, and try to replace the any with select user model here. And then I'm gonna pick only the properties that I need, like ID and full name. So full name like this, because I'm gonna show the user his full name in the, for example, navbar of our application. And also I'm gonna use the ID to redirect the user to his profile when clicking on the profile avatar. Now we are getting closer to interact with our database. Let me just close everything here. Perfect. Now if you hit Ctrl and P in the VS Code and search for form keyword here, we see that we have three primary forms in our application. One for user form, post form, and also the comment and reply form. We're gonna need the user form when the user is signing in, signing up, and also updating his data. We are gonna need the post form when the user is creating or updating a form, and also the comment and reply form when the user wants to create a new comment or create a new reply for a blog post. So now open the postform.tsx file here, and we are going to replace all of any types like this, this, and this in this file with the new types that we defined in our database schema. All of this is because that we want to achieve the most accurate type safety in our front end while we are communicating with our backend. It's really easy from this point of tutorial to the end. So I'm gonna select all of any types here, and then I'm gonna put the post schema, and then I'm gonna import it from the schema post here. Perfect for now. And also the use form hook that we are importing it from the React hook form library, which is a library to handle forms in a React project, is synced with the Zod library itself. So for the resolver of my post, I'm gonna use the Zod resolver and import from hook form resolver Zod. And for the schema here, I'm gonna pass the post schema with the lower p here, and perfect. Add a comma here. And now, for example, if I hover over this data here, you see that the data that my form is providing to this onSubmit function is exactly type safe and has exactly the types that I defined in the schema earlier, which is perfect. Then I can use this create post function. If I go over to it, you see that we are passing it to my mock service, which is responsible to communicate between client and the backend here. But just for now, the data type is unknown, so I can pass anything to it. Just leave it unknown for now, and after that we're gonna fix it. So now if the user, for example, types more than 255 characters for the title of the post when he's creating a new post, the user is gonna see the live form validations exactly below the input field. We're gonna see it in a moment. For example, the error message is gonna be something like you must not enter more than 255 characters, so the user knows what he should put in the input fields or select boxes. And also we are gonna reduce the mistakes created by the user, and also we are gonna reduce the unnecessary calls to our database when we do not need it, and we can handle it on the client side level. Now head over to the comment reply form.tsx file, and then select all of these any types here and replace it with comment schema. Perfect. And also for the resolver of my use form hook, I'm gonna import comment schema with lower c, and then I'm gonna put it inside the Zod resolver like this. Don't forget to import it. Perfect. Now for the user form, replace all of these any types here with user schema, and as before for the resolver field here, import Zod resolver and user schema for the Zod resolver schema. Now all of our forms and also their validations are now synced with the tables and their structure on our database. Also, another benefit of using a union on our schema is that easily use a switch case statement, and depending on the mode that our form is on, we're gonna use different API call services. For example, if the data mode is on update, we're gonna call the update function. If the mode is on sign up, we're gonna use the sign up function, and the same for the rest. Now that we also have fixed our forms in our application, let me just close all of the open tabs. Then I'm gonna head over to the schema folder here, and inside the index.ts file, I'm gonna export all of my tables, also their relations, like this. Let me just collapse everything like this. Now for the most important thing in our application, we are going to create a new file called index.ts, exactly in the same level with the schema folder here. Then I'm gonna export the DB object from this component so I can use it at any point inside my application. Now paste this code here, import the pool from EG, and also Drizzle from Drizzle ORM, and from the node Postgres library that we just installed earlier. And this is exactly the moment that we have prepared all this time in this tutorial. Through our application, we are going to use this DB object here to get any data with any relations from our database. For example, I can do something like this: db.query.post, and also can use the find many here to get all of posts inside our database as simply as this line of code. Or I can specify exactly what do I need from the database. For example, I can tell Drizzle find the first post where the post, let me just import it from our schema folder, where the post.category ID is equal to, for example, the one ID here, but the syntax is not valid here. And so I'm going to use something else, put this expression here, and instead of using equality sign, replace it with a comma here, and then import the EQ from Drizzle-ORM here like this. I don't know what the post import has gone to remove, so I'm gonna again import it from DB schema. And by now here we see that the TypeScript and the Drizzle ORM are so much intelligent by now that this red line here is telling us that the category ID is type of integer, but you are trying to compare an integer type with an string type, which is wrong. So I'm gonna replace this string here with an integer, and the error is gone. So again, if I replace the one with an string one, we see that the error is back. So we are gonna experience an amazing type safety throughout our application whenever we are, for example, trying to get data from our database, or when we are trying to insert data in our database tables. This is the most simple query that we are gonna use in this tutorial, and also we are gonna get so much more advanced than this. Just bear with me. Now remove this block here. Now head over to the DB folder again, and then create another file called migrate.ts file. This file is responsible to reflecting what we have defined in this schema folder, like category table, comment table, and also their relations to our database itself. So for example, if at any point of development process, I decided to add any field or any new relations to any of these files or my tables, I need to run the function that I'm gonna put in this migrate.ts file again. So I'm gonna paste this code here, then import the pool from PG, env from my library env file, and Drizzle also from the node Postgres Drizzle, like this. And anytime that we have committed new changes to our tables or our relations, as I said before, we're gonna run this main function here, the way that I will teach you in a few moments. So the thing that this function is gonna do is creating a pool using the database URL connection string on our env file here. Then it's gonna call the migrate function on node Postgres driver, and is gonna put the generated migration files inside the out field that we have defined on our drizzle.config.ts file, which means this path here. And also at the end of the operation, it's gonna log the migration done in the console. Now we need a way to run this migration file easily. So we need to head over to the package.json file, head over to the scripts block here, and at the end here, paste these commands here. The first one will generate our migration files. The migrate command will run the migrate.ts file here, and also an update command which will run both the generate and the migrate script together. So we mostly gonna use this db update script here to make our life easier. Now open a terminal and run this command db generate in that. I'm gonna type npm run db generate and hit enter. And if you head over to the db folder, we see that Drizzle has created a new folder called migrations, and inside that it has put our migration files like this. There is nothing special about these files that are gonna be generated by Drizzle itself. There are only raw SQL commands that will be generated by Drizzle, and just so you know, these files that will be generated here are somehow similar to the Git or other version control system that we use for our projects. So we can always revert back to the functional migration file if anything goes wrong. So it's a good thing to keep our migration files well organized and to make our code base more maintainable and easier to understand for new developers. Till now, we didn't do anything specific to our database, and we only have generated this migration file here. So we need to run these SQL commands and migrate our database with it. To do that, I'm gonna again open the terminal and type the docker compose up. My Docker client is not running currently on my system, so let me just start it. Now that the Docker engine is running on my system, I can again run the docker compose up command. Perfect, and the database system is ready to accept connections. Then I'm gonna create another terminal here. I'm gonna rename the terminal that is responsible for running our Docker and adminer, for example, something like Docker. And here I'm gonna run the npm run db update to first generate new migration files if needed, and then migrate those migration files to our database. So hit enter, and after that you see this message migration done. You know that everything went fine. Now we need to head over to the port 8080 of our local host, and we see that our adminer is running when we enter the docker compose up command. Then I need to select the Postgres for system. For the username, I'm gonna type Postgres, and Postgres, the name that we have entered our environment variables, and then login. Now we see that there is a new database here called blog, and inside that we see that all of our tables have been migrated to our database. So for example, if I open the tag table here, as you can see, I can see all of the fields or columns on my table. We have defined the ID and name on our table schema, which the ID is primary key and the name as the unique constraint. To see everything is working, I'm just gonna click on new item here. The ID will be auto-generated by the Postgres itself, and for the tag name, I'm gonna, for example, put test tag and hit save here. We see that the new row with the name that we just specified has been created, and also I can edit it if I want. So everything is working by now. But if you consider any issues during the generating and migrating your database, just remove this migration folder here and do it again. Because in development, the database schema might change a lot, so there is no need to keep track of our migration files always when the tables and their schemas or the database structure might change a lot. So if you have experienced any abnormalities during migrations, just delete the migrations folder and again do the db update command. Now if you head over to the adminer again and again log in and go to the blog database, we see that all of our tables are empty. So we need to somehow find a way to see our database, be it auto-generated or baked data, whenever we want to check that everything is working fine and have some data to work with inside our frontend. So seeding your database and find a way to do that is always a good practice and is gonna save you a lot of time during development. So now let's head over to the VS Code again, close close everything and collapse everything here. Inside the DB folder, I'm going to create a new folder called seeds folder, and inside that I'm going to create multiple files. For each table that I have inside my schema folder, I'm going to create the corresponding seed file. For example, for the category.ts file, I'm going to create another file called category.ts file in the seeds folder, which is responsible for seeding the category table itself. And also the same for other files that I have created here. And also we are going to use in this index.ts file to export all of these functions together. So now let's head over to the category.ts file for now, and then just paste this code here. Let me just import the category schema from the schema folder, also the DB from @DB, and the category table itself from schema category, like this. These are the fake categories that we want our category table to be filled whenever that we want. We are gonna getting this category schema type here from the category.ts file itself, where we have defined our table schema. Then we are gonna use that type safely to generate the type of data that we want here. And after that, I'm gonna insert these values, this mock value here, and I'm gonna insert them inside the category table itself, which is pretty self-explanatory. That was the seeding process for our category table. Now for the tag table, I'm going to paste this command here. I'm going to import tag schema. Also, I'm going to import the faker like this. Import faker from @faker.js/faker. You have not installed it yet, just install it using npm install faker.js/faker. Then import the DB here and also the tag table. The reason that we are going to need to pass the DB to the seed function is that we are going to do all of our seedings at once. So generating a DB for each seeding process is not a good option, and it might be very slow. So we are gonna do all of the seedings with only an instance of our database. We're gonna see it in a moment. We are gonna using the faker library to generate random lorem ipsum words with the maximum length of 15 for 10 times. So after the seeding, our tag table will be filled with 10 rows of random generated tags using the amazing faker library. Now head over to the user.ts file here and paste this command to generate and seed our user table. Import the necessary imports like this. Perfect. And also the seeding function itself. Perfect. All of the things here are pretty self-explanatory. If you're generating 20 random users with full name, password, age, and email to have data to work with during development. Now for the post.ts file, it might be a little bit more trickier. Import the necessaries here like this. DB from DB and also post table. Perfect. Because we are gonna seed our database sequentially. First we have seeded our category table, then tag table, after that user table. And because the post table is really related to those tables that I just mentioned, we are gonna use the data that we have generated on those tables here to create 100 posts with the help of faker, and also the data that we have got from the previous seedings like this. First of all, I'm gonna get the users and the categories like this, pretty self-explanatory, using promise.all to use all of them in parallel. And after that, I'm going to specify what this mock function is going to return by specifying the type of it, which I'm going to use the extract utility type from TypeScript to get the post schema when it is on mode create. So if I head over to the post schema here, I'm telling TypeScript by using extract utility that I'm going to need this schema here, not this, because I'm creating a new row of posts, but I don't need to provide the mode and also the tag IDs because we're gonna create tag IDs on the post tags table, not on the post table itself. And after that, I'm gonna push this data on the data constant that we just defined earlier using faker and the data that we have gotten from previous seeding process. For the title, we are gonna create fake lorem words. For the content, we are gonna use 20 paragraphs, and between each paragraph, we are gonna create 2 line breaks to make it a little bit prettier. The user ID, which we are using the faker helpers, pick a random user from the fetch data, the user data. We're going to use the ID of it. For the short description, we are going to use a simple lorem sentence, and also the same for category ID, which we are getting a random category ID like this. And after that, we are going to insert this data on our post table like this. Now for the post tags table, which is responsible for creating many-to-many relations between post table and tag table, and paste this code snippet here, import all necessary imports. Perfect. To create our post tags table, first we need to get our previous created post data and tags data. Also, we need to get some random posts. We're using array elements here from faker.js to get randomly picked number of elements from our post data like this. And after that, we are going to create our data array like this, which is an array of post IDs and tag IDs. And after that, we are going to insert them on our post tags table like this. Now, seeding the comment.ts file might be a little bit more trickier than the others because we have self-referencing relations, we have comments and replies that we want to create. So let me just import all of the necessary imports. Perfect. First, we need to seed our database with the parent comments itself. Like this, we are using the previous generated post data and the user's data to create our parent comments mock data like this. And after that, we are going to use the generated comments, which are the parent comment and also the user's data, to create replies for those comments that we have just created earlier randomly. The only difference between this child comments mock and the parent comments mock is that we have specified for the parent ID field in the child comments, but we did not specify the parent ID for parent comments. So we will consider them as parents, and also we are going to consider these comments as children of these parent comments. And after that, we are going to seed them one by one to our database. Then we just need to head over to the index.ts file and export all of our seed functions like this to make it more readable. And after that, inside our DB folder, I'm going to create a new file called seed.ts file, exactly at the same level as our migrate.ts file. Let me just collapse everything. And then inside this component here, I'm going to paste this code snippet, which is responsible for seeding our database. Before we do anything during our database seeding process, we need to empty our database and restart the ID table. So the new generated or seeded data will start at ID 1. Then we have a main function here, which we're gonna run it using TS6. If we head over to the package.json, yes, we are going to use TS6 here, exactly like the migrate.ts file. We're gonna create a for loop, and for each of our defined tables here, first of all, we are gonna reset them using this raw SQL command. And after that, we are gonna seed our database one by one and sequentially. Now we need to find a way to run the seeding process easily. So let's head over to the package.json file, and below the db update here, I'm gonna write this simple script here, db seed, which will be equal to tsx, and run the seed.ts file like this, seed.ts. Perfect. And after that, open a terminal here and run the npm run db seed like this. I forgot to save the seed.ts file. I hit Ctrl S here, and then again run the db seed script like this. And as you can see here, all of these SQL commands have been generated by Drizzle itself automatically. Also, it's a good source to learn SQL commands because Drizzle generates SQL commands perfectly. And now if you head over to the adminer dashboard and open the blog database, we see that all of our tables have been seeded perfectly. For example, I can open the rows of the post table and we see that everything have been seeded with mock data and faker.js perfectly, with correct relations to other tables. For example, the first mock post is created by the user with the ID of 14. Now, if we run our Next.js development server and head over to the port 3000, the data that we see here is not real and it is hard-coded in the front-end code base. So let's replace all the data that we see here, for example, in the post page or in the comment sections, or even the sign up and sign in functionality with our real database. So let's close everything and also collapse the src folder. Now let's head over to the src folder, app folder, and queries.ts file here. In the first function that we see in this file called get categories, we need to get the categories data existing on the category table from our database. It's really easy using Drizzle. Let's remove the mock data here and return await import db from @db.query and select the table that we want. We want category table and find many to get all the rows existing on our category table. And now if you head over to our application, we see that our navbar has been filled with real data from our database. These are the categories that are existing on our database. Perfect. But this way of handling queries is not very scalable because we need to find a solution to have more control over all of our queries. So we need to create a utility function. Let's head over to the DB folder, and inside the DB folder folder, let's create another folder called utils and create a file here called execute query.ts and paste this code inside of it and import the auth from lib/auth. It is not related to Drizzle, it's related to auth.js library, which is used for authentication inside JavaScript applications. This simple function is responsible for executing our queries inside our application, and with this way we have more control over our queries inside our application. Also, you can add additional options or logics to this function according to your needs. It gets multiple arguments. First one is the query function itself. It's the function responsible for communicating with the database. This is the error message that we want to be printed on the server console, and we have another field called is protected, so it is true by default, and if this field is true, then we must check that the session of the user is valid or not. For example, we have some queries that are available to the public. For example, all of the users in the internet can see all of the posts inside their application, but only authenticated users can see their profile. So for example, when we want to get the user from the database, we need to make sure that the current session of the user is authorized. And if the user is authorized, then we run the query function that we have passed to our execute query function. Also, we are gonna log any errors to the server console if anything goes wrong. This simple function was responsible for executing our queries. Then we need another function called execute action.ts, and we need to paste this code inside of it. Let me make it a little bit smaller. Import the auth from our lib folder, import the is redirect error from this path here from Next.js, and also import the get error message, which is a utility function. Let's just head over to it. It's a utility function that gets an unknown error, and according to the type of it or class of it, it will handle it differently, and at the end it will return us the corresponding message or error message. So as you would know, we have two ways of communicating with the database. One is we want to get data or read data from our database, and another way we can change or mutate or do some actions on our existing data in our database. So this function, the execute action function, is responsible to make changes to the database, which is mostly similar to the execute query function that I just explained with some tweaks, and you can also make additional changes to it according to your needs. The thing that you need to know here is that we can make it protected, and also we can pass an action function to it and run that action function, and also we can return a message to our client if the action is successful. Also, we can redirect it to the Next.js default error page like this, and after that we can return a failure message like this to our client. Perfect. We need always try to check the user authorization here and here as close as we can to our database. So as you can see here, exactly below running our query function here, I'm checking that if the session is valid or not, both for execute query and execute action functions. And again, let's head over to the queries.ts file in the root level of the app folder and replace this function with this function using the execute query function that we just created. So it is doing exactly that was doing before, getting all of the rows from our category table. The category is not protected, so all public users can see it. So we are setting is protected to false, and also we are assigning the get categories string to the server error message. So if anything goes wrong with this get categories function, and if we check the server console, we are gonna see that this error is generated in the get categories function. So this term will be logged in the console when any error occurs, or we can do other ways of handling errors. Now for the get tags function, I'm gonna replace it with this function, which will run this query function and gets all of the tag rows from the tag table. Now for getting related posts by category ID, I'm gonna replace all of this function with this boilerplate. Then inside the query function, we will get the related posts by category ID. So in this function, the goal is to get the posts by their category ID, which is pretty simple using the capabilities of Drizzle. To do that, as before, I'm gonna await the function called the db.query, select the post table and find many to get all of our posts. But because I want to show the user the related posts at the end of each post page, I'm gonna show them only 4 posts like this. So I'm gonna limit the find many function by 4. So this will return our recent 4 posts from our database, where the category ID on the post table is equal to the category ID that we are passing to this function. So we need to check this equality using the Drizzle ORM EQ function, then import the post table from our schema.categoryID and check it with the category ID that we are passing to this function. So this where class is going to check and finds for us the post where their category ID is equal to the desired category ID. And now if you hover over this function, we see that this function will return us all of existing columns for each post that it is returning, but it is so resource intenseful and is not very performant at all. And also we need to get only the fields that we need. So to specify the specific columns and enhance the performance of our application, I need to specify the desired columns like this. The IntelliSense is working here perfectly. I need the ID of the post, the title of the post, updated at, so we can show the user that when the post has been updated. And also we need a short description to show the user only a little bit of our post. And Drizzle can bring us this data with only one query to the database, which is a very amazing feature that only the Drizzle is capable of. Other ORMs like Prisma might generate multiple queries, get the same result, but Drizzle will do it in only one query to the database, which can be really performant for larger scale applications. So the goal of doing the tutorial in this way is that we are practicing how to create our query functions and not be involved with the presentational layer or the front end. So after that, we have implemented all of our queries files and also all of our actions file. Then we can head over to our application running on the port 3000 and see that everything is working together perfectly. And if we scroll down a little bit, we see that we have a get post count function here, which is pretty self-explanatory, and we will use it in different part of our application. So as before, let's replace it with this function, this boilerplate function, and we need to pass the function await db.select, and the Drizzle provides us with an amazing way to get the count of something like this. So I'm gonna add a new field called count here and import the count function from Drizzle ORM and call it like this from our post table .where and import the I-like function from Drizzle ORM, which if you're familiar with SQL, this is responsible getting data from our database without paying attention to the case of the words, or in other words, it's case insensitive. And then I'm going to compare the title on our post table, then compare it like this, use an $sign here, then compare it with the search term that we are providing to this function. So I'm going to use the search term like this, but this value might be undefined. So I'm going to put an empty string here if the search term is not provided like this, dot then, which is the then of JavaScript, not the Drizzle. And then I'm going to get the response from the callback and get the count that I'm looking for like this, which is perfect. Or we could have not done this part here and do that in the places that we want, but I decided to do it like this. So if we hover over this response here, we see that Drizzle is returning us an array, which I'm using the first index of it and get the count of it directly. So as I told you before, we are gonna use this get post count in various points of our application, mostly when we are searching for something and we need to know how many posts are there in our database with the specific search term that we have provided, which is also case insensitive, and we are gonna use it mostly for implementing the pagination of our application. And now if we scroll down a little bit, we see that here we have a get post function, which is responsible to get the post on our database at a specific page with a specific limitation and also with a specific search term, which it seems it might be a little bit tricky, but it's not at all with the help of the Drizzle. So we can achieve a pagination and also the searching capabilities, only a few lines of code for all of our posts. To save much time, I'm going to replace it with this function like this. And then I'm gonna import the descending function from the Drizzle ORM like this, because the IntelliSense of my VS Code auto import is not working perfectly. So I'm gonna import it by hand. Now let's head over to the get post again. Also, I'm gonna add an await here, which I forgot. And reading this Drizzle command is pretty self-explanatory. We are selecting all of our posts. We are gonna order the result that we are gonna get from the Drizzle by the created at field in a descending order with the limit that we are provide to this function. Mostly we are using a limit of number 8, which is a good limit to make our application more performant, with this provided offset here to handle our pagination. So we are gonna pass a page number and a limit number, and we are gonna get the desired data inside that page with the specific limit that we're providing it. Also we are gonna provide the search term to it, so we will get our paginated post also with the provided search term, which we have achieved an amazing thing here only with a few lines of code with the help of Drizzle. Now we need to get the post count of a user. If we scroll up a little bit, that we see we have implemented the get post count, and it is mostly similar to the previous function that we just implemented. So I'm gonna paste this code here. We are calculating the count of our post, where the user ID of the post table is equal to the provided user ID, and then we are returning the count of it in line like this. And for the get user post function, which is self-explanatory, it is going to get a user ID, a limit, and a page for the pagination, and returns the specific user post, because we can click on the user's profile and see all of his posts. So let's replace the body function with this code here, which we can get the user post like this. We are using query here, but if you have noticed, we have used select before, but using BigQuery is a little bit simple, but it might not be suitable for complex scenarios, like for example, searching for the specific post, but it's more than enough for 90% of times. So I'm gonna get the post where the user ID is equal to the providing user ID with the specific limit and the offset, calculating by multiplying the limit and page in a descending order. And also we are gonna need a function for getting the user data by providing the user ID itself. So let's paste this function here and import the user from the user schema folder like this. So because we need to find only a specific user by its user ID, we are gonna use find first instead of find many, and we are checking where the user.id is equal to the passing user ID. Also, we are gonna need only the full name, the email, and also the ID fields from our found user row. So we are gonna save a little bit of our application resource. That was all of it for the queries in the app folder. Now let's open the file explorer again and head over to the actions.ts file, which, as I told you before, the actions file are responsible to making some changes to the database. So let's remove everything here and paste this code here. Instead of executing a query, we are executing an action here, which we are importing from our utils folder. And for the action function itself, we are going to pass this auth sign out function. Let's head over to it. And as you can see here, this function, which is responsible to signing out a user from our application, is mocked for now, and we are going to replace it in a few moments. So let's close it. And that was for the actions.ts file in the app folder, which is responsible to signing out the user. And now let's head over to the sign up folder or the sign up route and open the actions.ts file here and replace the body with this code, import execute action, the user schema, the user table, not the user seats, the user table, and also the db from our db folder like this. First of all, the way that this function is going to work, first of all, we are going to provide it with the data that the user is providing by filling up the form. For example, he enters his email or password, but because we know that user might enter anything and we don't know what he's gonna provide us, we are using the unknown type here, and by the help of Zod and the user schema that we have created inside our user.ts file, we can validate the data passing by the user, and if this function or if the parsing by Zod does not work perfectly, this function causes to throw an error, and if we head over to the execute action function, we see that we are catching that error and we are returning a failure message to the user. Then after that, we are gonna show a toast message at the bottom of our application, so the user is gonna know that something went wrong and might change the provided data. But if the data provided by the user is valid, we can go on to the rest of the function. After that, we need to check that if the data provided by the user .mod is equal to sign up, we know that the user is on sign up phase. After that, we can insert to our user table like this with the values that is validated by Zod. So with this way, we can insert a new row to our user database. After the sign up is successful, we can after that redirect the user to the sign in page to sign in to our application with the data that he has used to sign up in our database. So all of this was only for signing up, and the beauty of implementing Drizzle ORM with Zod schema is that we can use our table schema and try to validate the data that the user is providing us from the presentational layer of the application or the front end of it, and then validate it, and after that insert that validated data in our database with the least possible amount of code and also with scalability in mind. Now for the next file, let's head over to the sign-in file and open the actions.ts file here, and then replace the body with this function. As always, import execute action and user schema. The thing that this function is doing is exactly as signing up process. First of all, we are validating the data provided by the user. After that, we are using the signing function providing from auth.js library to sign in the user to our session. And after that, we are gonna redirect the user to the homepage of our application. This function was mostly related to authorization, not Drizzle ORM itself. And for the last function of our authorizing process, head over to the queries.ts file in the sign-in folder, and we see a get user by email and password function here, which is pretty self-explanatory, and we are gonna get the user by his email and password to sign him in our application in a few moments. So let's replace the body of the function with this code here. Import the execute query, the user schema, the DB, the user table, import the EQ, and also we can and or different conditions with this amazing and or utility providing by the Zod, which are pretty powerful and very readable. So let's import it from Drizzle like this. Perfect. And by this simple function, we are first of all validating the data passed by the user as before. And if the validated data.mod is on sign-in phase, after that we are gonna selecting the user, the specific user where these two conditions are applied together. And for the last thing related to the authorization part of our application, let's head over to the lib folder and auth.ts file and replace this part with this part and import the get user from the function that we just created a few moments ago. And this is mostly related to the authentication and auth.js library. It's not mostly related to Drizzle, but for information, we are first of all getting the user by the credentials passing from this authorized function. If the user is not there, we are throwing an error to the user that the user not found or the credentials might be wrong. And also if there is no error, we are returning the found user and also his ID like this, which is necessary for auth.js library to work. And with this simple way, we can easily save the user session to our local storage and log the user in. Now for the rest of our function, let's head over to the public segment of our application. Inside that, head over to the post route. In the ID dynamic segment, open the actions.ts file here, which is responsible for creating comments for each post. So let's replace this mock function with this function, import all necessary imports, like this. As we have done multiple times earlier in this tutorial, first of all, we are getting the data from the user. We are validating it by the corresponding schema. After that, we are going to inserting it inside our database. After that, we are going to using the revalidate path from the next cache to revalidate a segment that we are inside of it. And we are telling the Next.js to refetch all necessary queries automatically. The thing that you can also do here is instead of using unknown here, you can use the comment schema from the comment table that we have defined earlier to make our application a little bit more type safe. Also, we can do it for our sign-in route like this. Actions, instead of unknown, we can use user schema. All of this is personal preference. For sign up, we can also do it again, import user schema. Perfect. Now inside the post folder, the ID, we have finished actions.ts file. Let's head over to the queries.ts file, which is responsible for getting the post by its ID like this, and replace it as before with this function, import necessary imports. We are telling Drizzle that we need the first item that you find where the ID of the post is equal to the providing ID with the category of it, the user of it, and the comments of it. We can specify with the with clause here that get the desired post by its ID with its category, the author of it or the user who wrote it with the specified columns like this. We are telling Drizzle that get the specific post and its user with only his ID and full name fields. Also, we are getting all of the comments of the desired post with the user who wrote that comment. Let this function sink a little bit more. We have done something mind-blowingly amazing with the Drizzle. So if you hover over the function, we see that we are getting all of necessary things related to our post like ID, created at, title, and so much more with the category of it, the user of it, and also the comments of it, which is gonna be an array with only single query to the database using the power of Drizzle and also the relations that we have specified for each table. So if I head over to the post table, we see that we have defined the post fields like this before, and also we have specified that our post is gonna have relations to the user, to the tags, comments, and category, which we are using all of these defined relations to create these types of complex query with the least possible amount of code like this. So if you specify in the with object that I want the returning post to have also its category, we can simply do that. We can simply specify which columns of that relation that we want, and so much other amazing capabilities that you can study the documentation of the result to find out more about it. And we have achieved this type of result with also amazing type safety that the Drizzle and type safety is providing us. So for example, I can also get the tags of each post like this, but in that case we are not gonna need it, so let me just remove it. Also for the category, I can also specify which columns that I want. And as you can see, the IntelliSense is working amazingly, which is perfect. So let me just return it back like this. Now open the File Explorer, head over to the categories, ID, and the queries.ts file. We have a get category post count, which we have done multiple times till point of tutorial. So replace this with this function, import necessary imports. Perfect. And for the get post by category ID, we need to get the desired post by providing category ID, page, and limit, which we have done multiple times again. So let's paste this code here and import the descending from Drizzle ORM. Perfect. So we are getting only the ID, title, short description, and updated at fields from our post table, the specific offset and limit, where the category ID of the post table is equal to the providing category ID, and with the descending order as before. We could have removed all of this here, but we might save a little bit the resource of our server, so let's revert it. Now for the admin segment of our application, let's close all of our routes, head over to the admin and admin folder and open the root queries.ts file here. And here we need to get the current user from our database using the nodejs or auth.js with the little bit help of our database. So let's paste this code here, import necessary imports. Perfect. The thing that we are doing here is, first of all, we are going to get the session from the auth function. After that, we are going to get the user ID existing on the session and save it in a variable called session user ID. If the session user ID is empty or nullish, we simply return this function with an early exit with the value of null. And if everything is correct, we'll point here we are running this simple query which is going to return the user ID from our database, where its ID is equal to the current session user ID. So we are getting the current user from our database using the existing ID inside our session, which is necessary for our application. Now for the actions.ts file here, we need to update the user. So first of all, I'm gonna change this unknown to user schema like this and replace this function like this. Import necessary import as before. As before, we are checking the validity of the data provided by the user here. If the form or the user form is on update phase, we are gonna call the update method on the DB and specifying our desired table, which here is user, and we are gonna set on that table the provided data where the user ID is equal to the ID on the validated data itself, which is on our form. This was the way that we update the existing entities on our database using update and set using Drizzle, which is also pretty simple, and we have achieved something amazing with the least amount of code. We are validating the data provided by the user. After that, we are gonna update the desired row on our table. So if you have noticed till now, we have one user schema and we have used it for creating a user or signing up, signing in, and also updating a user. So if I head over to the user schema here, we see that we have defined different mode or phases of our form, and only with the single validation schema called user schema, we have validated multiple scenarios, which is an amazing feature that Zod provides us. Now head over to the post folder, and here we have an actions.ts file. This function is gonna return a post by providing the desired ID. Deleting in Drizzle is pretty simple. Let's replace it. To delete a post, because we have another table related to the post table here, which is called post tags, we also need to delete the desired rows inside the post tags table also. So we are deleting our desired post like this, also all of its dependencies like this. Now for creating a post, head over to the create and actions.ts file here. To create a post for our database, first change this unknown to post schema like this and replace the body with this function. And also this is a mistake here, remove it and only use post ID here for inserting part here. As we have learned before, we are first of all validating the data. Creating a post might be a little bit different because we are gonna create a post in two steps. First of all, we need to create the post itself by inserting the validated data to our post table. Also, we are specifying that Drizzle must return the new post ID generated by Drizzle and put it inside a variable called post ID inside the returning object. We can also return many other things. We can specify that I need another field from the newly created post. For example, I can say that return for me the title of the new post or many other fields, but in this case we are going to only need a post ID and we are going to return it like this. After that, we are going to using the created post ID and inserting the desired tags that the user is providing us to the post tags like this, because if you recall, the post table and the tags table have a many-to-many relation. So because of that, we have created another table, join these two tables together using a post tags table. So after creating our post, we need to also create a corresponding rows inside our post tags to create the many-to-many relations between post and tags table. And also, if the user does not provide any tags or select any tags, this function won't run, which is exactly the behavior that we want. After that, we are revalidating the path of admin/post by the help of Next.js. Now for the update post function, first replace this with post schema and replace the function body and import the EQ from Drizzle ORM. Perfect. First, we validate the data. After that, we are checking the mode that the user is on. If the user is on mode edit, we are gonna update and set the desired post with the validated data like this. After that, we are gonna delete all of the rows on the post tags table like this. And again, we are inserting the changed tags to our post tags table like this. So first we update the post itself. After that, we might know that the tags of the post have been changed by the user. So we are gonna need to delete the desired post tags. After that, we are gonna again insert the new tag IDs to the post tags like this. So this was for creating a post and also updating a post using Drizzle, which was a little bit tricky. So if you have any questions regarding this section of the tutorial, just leave a comment down below. Now for the last function of the whole tutorial, let's head over to the ID folder and the queries.ts file. Here we have another getPostById function. The difference between this function and the one that we have done inside the public segment of our application was that the getPostById that we had in the public route consists more data that we do not need them here in the admin segment of our application. So we're gonna need a little bit less data. And also keep that in mind that this function is gonna be protected by the execute query function that we have just created. So if we don't pass any is protected field like this, default value is gonna be used, which is true. So if I check it and head over to the execute query here, we see that we're providing the true if you sometimes forgot to pass the is protected field to our execute query function. Also, I could have done something like this, is protected, and set it to true, which is exactly the same. Import the necessary imports like this, and also the DB. So the Drizzle finds for us the first post that it finds with these specific columns, with this where clause, with all of the tags like this. Now that everything have been implemented, let's head over to the localhost port 3000, and as you can see here, everything is working perfectly. So I can sign up with a new user, for example called Fu, with the age of 18, or for example if I put below 18 here and hit on submit, you see that all the validations are working perfectly. So I'm gonna use a test email like this, add a password to sign up the new user, and after that I have been redirected to the sign-in page, so I can log in like this, foo@foo.com with the password of foo, and hit enter. As you can see here, the new user has been logged in. I can click on read more of each post. I can see the author of the post, the category of it, and the date that it has been updated. I can click on the user, the author name, and head over to all of his posts. I can click on the category of it and see all of the posts of the category. I can come here and type a new comment, for example test, and the comment has been created. I can also create a reply to it like this and send a reply. As you can see, the snack is showing us here, or the toast message, and also the reply text which is here. Also we can sign up or sign in with different users and see that everything is working perfectly. We have related posts here. Also we have navbar here, which I, for example, click on algorithms. We're going to see all related posts to the algorithms. We have implemented pagination like this, which is attached, which the page number is attached to the query params like this. Also we can search for the post that we want. For example, if I type this and hit enter, we see that the desired post, or if I only search for a keyword, we see that we have searched for a search term. Also the pagination is working perfect. And also I can head over to the admin dashboard, a very simple dashboard, by clicking on the user profile here. I can change the name of the user, for example from Fu to Fu2, and change the age, for example, to 32, and hit on enter. As you can see, the user updated successfully here, and the query has been revalidated by the power of Next.js. This was the user profile. I can click on post tab like this, and I can create a new post, for example new post short description, new post content, the category I'm going to choose, for example APIs, and I'm going to select all of the tags like this and click on submit. Here you can see the new post has been created. I can click on actions. I can edit my post title, for example to new post 2, hit on submit. Everything is revalidated again. I can delete the post. I can click on view to see it inside my application, or I can head over to the home page and I can see that the new new post has been added here, or I can click on read more, click on the author profile, which is the current user, and see all of his posts here like this, or many other things that we can do with this simple yet very powerful blog that we have created for ourselves. Also, we can head over to the home page here and click on view all to see all of our posts, to see that the pagination is working flawlessly. And after that, I can finally sign out from the application. And when I click on sign out, I'm going to redirect it to the sign in page. And if I try to head over, for example, to the admin/host like this, we see that the Next.js is throws us the 404 page, which is exactly the behavior that we have implemented inside the application. So the unauthorized users cannot see the protected routes. Also, if I head over to the home and click on a post, we see that the user that is not authorized cannot create comments on the post or do anything special except for reading posts. So again, if I try to sign in like this, you're going to see that you can create comments on the new post perfectly. So this was much of it for this tutorial. I hope you have learned so many new things about SQL and Drizzle ORM. Also, you can use this free boilerplate for your own application without any concerns. And if you have something on your mind about this tutorial, I would be really glad that you comment them down below. Thanks for watching. See you later.